Sarah Richet, species at risk biologist, senior. Guelph girl, also. Going on 20 years of chasing these things now. She has lots of knowledge, lots of wisdom. We're sitting on so much turtle data, we need a super interested PhD student. That's what we need. Many interested even, yes. It's a unique place. Turtles have a special focus because they connect directly with those two big marshes, part of the Great Lakes area of concern. All sorts of measures. Turtles used to get measured for contaminants in them, the snapping turtles. And how old turtles live, it's a little bit by species, but basically we're going to figure out they would outlive us, which means not a good idea to have a turtle as a pet because it'll outlive you. Interesting. Or you pass it to your grandkids. Over to you, Sarah.
Hello, everybody. I am famous on my team for going over time, so I'm going to try to avoid that by speaking very quickly. My apologies in advance. So my presentation today is essentially a love letter to all of our volunteers because of how much they have contributed over the years, and especially in 2024. A mad thank you to Fiona and Peter Morley, and I don't know if Fiona is here, but I know Peter's in the audience. So it takes a village. And another quick thank you to some of the ladies that really make the volunteering happen. Our volunteer leads and volunteer council members, Fiona Morrison and Catherine Schimmel, and our manager of volunteers and fundraising, Lexi Van Harten. Thank you so much. You are constantly doing good in the world, and clearly it is turning into piles of good. So thank you, especially with how much you help me out, because without you guys making sure that the volunteers are notified and trained and scheduled and all that stuff all that multitasking that I'm terrible at, you guys are taking care of it and you're making it happen. A million thank yous. So one of the species that the volunteers were helping us out with this year is the American Columbo. This is a super cool plant. RBG's subpopulations are part of one of the 8 populations left in the entire country. They all exist in Ontario, and they are all declining. The population is in decline. It is threatened, of course, by habitat loss. There's actually 2 major populations that I think are one of the largest populations that are also currently threatened by development, because what isn't these days? There's various other threats that are speculated, but it turns out there's not a lot of studies on it. And one of the reasons why there's not a lot of studies on this plant is because it is a monocarpic perennial, and that means it blooms once and it dies. But nobody knows how long it takes for it to bloom. They have actually had, there was a few people who studied this species, and there were some rosettes that they found were living up to be 30 years old and still hadn't bloomed. And so that's literally somebody's entire career waiting for something to bloom. So clearly it's going to be difficult to be able to gather enough data to make any generalizations. But there have been people who are able to notice some rosettes able to bloom within 5 years or 12 years or 20. So with this lack of knowledge, it makes it a little harder to tell if something that you are doing is working or not working. So I only have my 8 past years of experience here, but I'm just going to work with the knowledge that I have. Now, one of the things that is very natural in the world is, in the buildup of leaf litter. Leaves grow on a tree. They fall. They pile up. Before humans came here, however, there were occasional fires that took place every few years, every several decades, depending on what type of vegetation community you were in. Prairies would get more burns. Forests, I don't know about how frequent forests were down here. But because fire suppression means that the leaves just keep building up, fire suppression can essentially become a type of habitat degradation, because suddenly you're not getting that stochastic event, the random event of a fire coming through and recycling all those nutrients sitting on top of the forest floor. So I was noticing that there were some rosettes at one of our sites that were first of all, there's the one here on the picture on the right where you've got this gorgeous, rosy colored, green, chlorophyll-filled, healthy rosette that's just sprouting up from the dirt in early March. And then peeling back some of the leaf layer, because I noticed some of the rosettes that I used to monitor every year had disappeared, but they hadn't bloomed, which means they were just gone. They didn't get to fulfill their life purpose of reproduction. But then I peeled away some of the leaf litter and found that there were some sickly-looking rosettes that hadn't even gotten any green yet. They were having to fight to get through the leaf litter. Now, normally there are loads of other American Columbo populations in the province that can successfully get through the leaf litter, but that does take them some energy that they have stored in the roots from the prior year. So if they had a really rough year, let's say I remember in 2012, that was like the summer there was hardly any sun, it was so cloudy and it was always cool. But it meant that if they had a rougher year the year before, and then they don't have a whole lot of energy stored in their roots to be able to make it through that leaf litter in the spring. So what was the prescription for that fix? Let's pretend to be fire and bring some rakes out onto the site. So I invited a handful of volunteers out with me and my then intern to help remove some of the leaf litter on the slope. And of course, that requires some people who do not have, well, they have to have better knees than I do, and better, like the slopes like this they don't suffer a bad back. So, and you had to be very delicate, and you had to be interested in looking for very small things, which is sort of like a treasure hunt. It is a treasure hunt. And that means that these people were able to help open up that soil, and you can see the areas that was raked there on the left, and they also assisted me in marking some of those rosettes with some flags so that to help me monitor them in future. And as you can see the picture on the right, that's a picture taken at the same site, not from exactly the same angle. That's my fault for not doing a proper take a picture from the same spot before and after thing. But I can anecdotally say that the rosettes really appreciated it. They were the most robust I had seen them ever at that site. I think they loved having that much space. They loved that opportunity to grow. So score one for us. Another way that the volunteers helped this year is we did a lot of work with our fledgling American chestnut seed orchard. So chestnut blight was a terrible pathogen that killed over 99% of the American chestnuts on the continent. And by the way, the American chestnut used to be the dominant tree. They were like, over 100 years ago, they were the oaks that you see everywhere. And now they are gone. So it started in the late 1800s and early 1900s. There's only about 2,000 or so left in the country. And the ones that are here at RBG, I mean, we've got, overall, there's like they estimate there's about 150 to 200 that are mature. All of those ones that are mature are not doing very well. They're having to fight a lot of different things. And overall, because these trees are not self-fertile, anyone here, can you reproduce by yourself? Are you parthenogenic? Can you just pop out a baby without involving someone else? Chestnut trees are the same way. Well, American chestnut trees are. They need another chestnut tree with which to pollinate in order to reproduce. So once the disease wiped out everything and there were all these scattered, isolated trees that were left behind, even though they're alive, they can't contribute to their population. Their population can't grow, which means they're essentially functionally extinct without intervention. So, and especially with the low survival rates and low recruitment rates, the majority of them die before they ever reach maturity and are unable to fruit. Which means that, so while there's some, the remaining trees, they have some blight tolerance, which is great. That's slightly higher chances for the few trees we have left on our property. RBG has approximately 12, although I even just found out yesterday one of them is going to die due to blight again. So we're down to just under a dozen known trees, and of those dozen, only 2 are mature enough to fruit. The other two, we used to have 4, but one was taken up by the blight 2 years ago, and the other one, it's completely top killed by a native fungus called armillaria root rot. So they're here, but they're too isolated to cross-pollinate. What is the prescription? How do you fix that? Among many things, we of course work with the Canadian Chestnut Council, some fantastic people who work with the University of Guelph at the Simcoe Research Station, Dr. Dragan Gallic, and he helps us make copies, make clones of these trees. So we are now a chestnut dating service. We have taken clones, we took cuttings, and Dragan weaved his magic. He's literally a dragon that protects these trees. So his name is Dragon, by the way. So we brought the copies of these trees closer together, and then we planted them in such a spot such that in 12 to 15 years or so, if all goes well, then they will be mature enough to be able to cross-pollinate with each other, because they need to have a chestnut within at least 30 meters or so in order for cross-pollination to occur. And because there are a whole bunch of genetic copies, and it's hard to predict how successful the grafts will be, like we can collect 20 cuttings from a tree, they might only turn into 2 grafts. We can collect 10 from one tree, 9 of them could turn into grafts, but suddenly you don't want to plant 9 that are copies of each other all beside each other, because they're not self-fertile. Remember, they need to have a different chestnut in order to produce, so we have to spread them out, and we made sure that they got distributed in such a way as to maximize genetic diversity. And you can see our fantastic volunteers here. They helped us dig the holes. They helped us transport all that material, that is some doing, by the way. We're not just moving trees. You are moving the T-bars. You're pounding in those T-bars into the ground. You are carrying out and creating and installing all of the browse protectors. You are installing up the tags. You are watering them. You are putting in the bunny guards and the rodent guards. You are helping us with the mulch, and that's 2 layers of wet cardboard with at least 3 inches of shredded pine bark mulch. My hope is that in about a dozen years to 15 years, there will be some nuts that we can plant out back into the natural lands. So my hopes are high. And thankfully, these volunteers made it happen because there is no way in HE double hockey sticks we would have been able to get it done in time at all. And if anyone thinks that all of the browse guards we use are overkill because we use a rodent guard, thing is bunnies will bite off whatever is above the rodent guard, so you also have to put in a bunny guard, and we typically use chicken wire for that. But if all you do is put in a rodent guard and chicken wire, what the deer does is laugh and then lean over both of those and eat what you planted, so we also have to put up a deer guard. So, and then of course there's the mulch because you don't want the tree to dry out. You want it to be able to retain all that moisture. And when we put up a picture of that on the Canadian Chestnut Council's website, I remember seeing a comment where someone says, how about you just stick a nut in the ground? And I thought, this is not overkill. My aim is to frustrate bunnies and deer. And it worked according to this photo. As you can see, the poo from a very frustrated rabbit and a very happy, protected, safe, endangered American chestnut sapling. We even had the partner of one of our workers here, one of our seasonal workers. Dang, only 2 minutes left. Nuts. So we had a professional. He donated his skills to climb over 35 feet high because he is trained and he had the equipment to do it in order to retrieve what turned out to be 9 cuttings that we could therefore turn into a graft, because otherwise there was no way for us to retrieve grafts from a tree that high. So thank him for donating his Saturday. There was also some fantastic people who assisted us with removing invasives manually, because you do not want to use chemicals around endangered trees, by the way. That's a good way to get them killed. So both American chestnuts and red mulberries, which are both endangered, by the way, and RBG, we host the largest proportion that is owned by a single landowner of the remaining trees left in the country. Everyone else owns 5, 2. There might be 7 that occur at a provincial park. RBG's land hosts 80, which means what we do and what we don't do makes a difference. So what we are doing is working at removing the invasive species from around at least the root zones of especially our younger trees, because we also want to ensure that they don't have to fight against invasives in order to get enough water, sunlight, space. We want them to put their energy into growth and fighting off pathogens. So a massive thank you to the people that struggled through the nastiest, horrendous root-bound messes of buckthorn and honeysuckle in these areas to help improve these site conditions. We also had people delivering pamphlets because we've got turtles wandering out into the neighborhoods that are adjacent to RBG's property. So what do? Notify the neighbors. There were fantastic volunteers that delivered over 720 turtle information pamphlets asking neighbors that if they saw a turtle on RBG land or on their land to please give us a call. And what that resulted in was 20 turtle rescues and some recaptures with 11 nests protected that turned into 167 hatchlings within the delivery zones. That's fantastic. That's half of the adult turtles that were rescued. That also resulted in one of our endangered Blandings turtles, Lola, at the bottom corner here of this picture. And her nest turned into 8 babies that we sent off for head starting. And we also were able to retrieve some fantastic observations of turtles that we had notched. So there were ones that we know that when we re-encounter them again. So like, for example, there was one that was notched DK, who was last seen in 2020 at Hendry Park, showed up over on Unsworth. And another snapper, Vi, was seen in someone's backyard, and the landowner was extremely upset that she was digging her nest in his mulch. I'd love for someone to value the safety of an animal over the looks of their mulch, but what can you do? And that one she was last seen in 2019 in Kippax Garden, so they are wandering around. There's also, of course, the night tracking. Mad props to Wendy for so many times that she was helping us out. And of course, the people who help us out with the night tracking, they also get to help out with the baby turtle bath time. So, because the surveyor and volunteer equals safe night work. Who here wants to have their daughter or friend or themselves work alone in the middle of nowhere at night? Anyone? 2 a.m., you're out there alone? Is that a good idea? No. You know what's better is when we're with someone else. 2 people is a lot safer than 1, so thank you, because we literally could not track alone. It's not safe for us to do it, and you guys, the volunteers, you make it happen. You make it so that we can improve the numbers of our endangered species. And of course, this is not to be understated. Shoreline cleanups are not just shoreline cleanups. They are services in wildlife injury and death prevention. These photos here on the right are just an example of some of the ways that garbage can kill wildlife. We had a turtle killed by an improperly discarded tire, improperly discarded fishing line. We had a trumpeter swan cygnet whose beak got caught in a pop can. So And annually, we do these cleanups, both at Princess Point and in the Valley Inn area. 1,000 thank you to the people who come out and help out, because we remove the garbage and make it safe for everything. You make it better for the fish, better for the frogs, better for the birds, better for the turtles. So it's a direct help. This past year, we had some fantastic volunteers help us clean up 19 bags of trash. And of course, he's not even here to appreciate the thank yous, but Danny Stone, this was a volunteer who actually provided us with his time every Thursday afternoon, and he helped us with a laundry list of things that I could not have done without him, especially when I lost my summer student halfway through the season. So even though he was a retired wildlife biologist, anyone here who's interested, you don't have to be a pro to help us. You've got to be physically able to do the work and interested in doing it. And that can range from anything from cleanups to invasive species work to monitoring, to surveying, anything you like. We will find a way to make it find a way to make you feel like you're contributing, because you definitely are when you step foot on our property. Thank you.
Very good, very good. Lots going on out there, lots. Lexi's in the back if you want to be a volunteer. Step one. Any questions, though, for Sarah? We saw a couple of plants, a couple of turtles.
Any
Coffee?
questions online? No?
Coffee time and break, bathroom break. That's where we're at. We'll see you in 10, 15 minutes.